It was supposed to be just another normal dig. A group of archaeologists were working near the edge of the Judean desert, looking for old Roman pottery and coins. The sun was blazing, the ground was dry. It looked like another day with nothing special to find. But then, a young volunteer spotted a small opening behind a fallen stone wall. At first, it seemed like nothing, just an empty space in the rock. But when they cleared the rubble, they found a hidden chamber sealed for almost 2,000 years. Inside, wrapped in layers of hard leather and clay, was a scroll. Not broken pieces, a whole scroll, perfectly preserved like time had never touched it. The team stood quietly. This felt different, almost sacred. It wasn't like the old, damaged Dead Sea Scrolls. This one was well preserved by the dry cave, careful sealing, and maybe even God's hand. If you believe in God and Jesus Christ, make sure to click the like and subscribe button below the video. The scroll was small and simple, made of leather with a strange hand-drawn fish symbol on it. They took it carefully to a nearby lab and unwrapped it slowly. What they found inside would give chills even to skeptics. It wasn't a religious text or a letter of doctrine. They found something deeply personal, a handwritten diary from a man who had walked with the earliest followers of Jesus. He wasn't famous or named in any gospel, but he had seen and heard Jesus himself. He kept his faith quietly, not seeking recognition. When experts unrolled the scroll, they expected old teachings or records. But it was different. The faded ink still showed clear, heartfelt words, not a history lesson but a personal story. It wasn't a sermon for crowds, but a quiet confession from the past. As they read the words, a calm filled the room. The diary began softly. I heard his voice before I saw him, and it made me weep. It left everyone silent. The writing was simple and steady, without fancy words. The author didn't want fame. He just wanted to remember the truth and the holy moment that changed his life. Line after line, it was clear he had been there, walking quietly behind Jesus, seeing things others didn't, observing from the shadows. This made his words powerful. What moved the scholars most wasn't just what he wrote, but how he wrote it, with sincerity and honesty. The diary didn't try to prove anything. It was the simple truth of a witness who was finally being heard. Even experienced researchers weren't prepared for the power of that first sentence. When they finally read that scroll out loud, everything changed. I heard his voice before I saw him, and it made me cry. The room went silent. No debates, no big speeches, just one sentence that was more powerful than 1,000 sermons. It wasn't written like a poem or a sermon, but like someone deeply moved by what he felt, not just what he saw. The translator had to pause, his voice shaking, eyes tearing up. It wasn't about head knowledge, it hit the heart. Even people who didn't believe in God felt something. The more they read, the heavier it felt. The diary didn't follow dates, it followed feelings. Each entry came from memories too precious to lose. It was like someone trying not to cry while writing. This wasn't just history. It was a man's heart. He wasn't proving anything. He was trying to save what he could never fully explain. That first sentence opened a door, not to the past, but to a sacred space where faith, pain, and awe met. Readers were never the same after reading it. His name was barely clear on the second scroll, written small, like it didn't matter. Manam, son of Josek. No title, no claim to fame. Not a prophet, not a disciple, not important in his time. No one talks about him in the Gospels. History forgot him, but he had seen something. Manam said he was a worker with wood, living in Galilee, in a village where people prayed with their hands, not just words. He wasn't educated, didn't know Greek, but he understood silence and what it meant to be ignored. Maybe that's why he saw what others missed. He first heard of Jesus through whispers at the market about a rabbi who healed people and spoke with authority. Manam didn't rush to see him. He stayed back, unsure if it was real. One day, he stood on a hillside in a crowd and heard a voice that didn't demand but called. From then on, he quietly followed, staying at the edges, listening, watching, never asking questions, never stepping forward. In his small scroll, he wrote what his heart could no longer keep quiet. He didn't want to be remembered, he just couldn't forget. He hadn't planned to meet Jesus or look for miracles. He carried a burden in his heart. His younger brother had been sick for weeks. No one could help. The village healer gave up. Out of desperation, Manam took his brother to Capernaum on a cart, hoping someone could help him. When they arrived, a crowd had gathered. Word spread that the healer was near, but the man they spoke of wasn't inside a house. He didn't look like a rabbi or have guards around him. He was just walking slowly among the people. Manam tried to get closer, but the crowd was thick. Then, a calm, clear voice cut through the noise. Manam froze. His brother was moaning in pain, but for a moment, Manam just listened. He didn't understand all the words, but the voice felt peaceful and powerful. Later, he wrote that it was a voice that made the world feel still. He never reached Jesus, never touched him, or spoke to him. But as Jesus spoke, his brother's groaning stopped. The fever was gone, and his brother was calm. Manam went home, not proud, but with a new purpose. Something inside him woke up that day. From then on, he followed Jesus wherever he went. Manam saw many miracles, but one miracle was different. It wasn't done with hands, and it wasn't announced. It healed a wound deep inside him. When Manam was a child, he lost his mother during a Roman raid, and no one talked about it. He grew up quiet, working hard, but the pain stayed deep inside him. One day, Jesus was sitting under a fig tree, talking to children. Manam was nearby, just watching. Then Jesus paused, looked at him, and said, "There is no grief hidden from my Father." Manam felt weak. He had never told anyone about his pain, but those words broke through his silence. He walked away and cried for the first time in years. The tears came from deep inside. Later he wrote that no one touched him, but something broke open in him that day, and it never closed again. His heart was healed. Manam didn't ask for this, but Jesus gave it to him anyway, not to be seen, but to heal him. Many followed Jesus for his words or miracles, but Manam followed because Jesus noticed the unnoticed. Manam wasn't close enough to hear every sermon or brave enough to ask questions, but he saw the quiet moments others missed. He once saw Jesus stop for a small boy carrying a heavy jar of water while the crowd kept walking. Jesus noticed him, even when others didn't. He crouched next to the boy, smiled, and carried the jar home with him. No one else noticed, but Menahem did. He wrote it down. Jesus didn't say a word, but the boy's eyes lit up like heaven walked beside him. In a crowded village, a crippled man sat quietly. Jesus knelt, washed his feet, and anointed his wounds. Without a word, Jesus stood, dusted his robe, and began teaching. To most it seemed small, but Menahem saw deep love. He wrote, he served quietly and loved without being asked. Later, Jesus spoke to a hot, tired crowd. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Those words hit Menahem's heart. He'd lost his brother and had hidden his grief, but Jesus' words released his tears and gave him comfort. For Menahem, the greatest miracle was Jesus' kindness and connection. Another day, Jesus fed thousands with just 5 loaves and 2 fish. The baskets kept filling. Menahem saw more than a miracle. He saw joy, laughter, and hope returning to people's hearts. He wrote, "He filled our stomachs but also our souls." Not all days were easy. Menahem wrote of a night of doubt, watching Jesus pray. He questioned everything. Why am I here? Then he witnessed a healed woman rejected by her family whisper, "He called me daughter, and that's enough." Her faith reignited his. Menahem stood in the shadows at Jesus' crucifixion. The suffering was awful, but what stayed with him was Jesus' eyes, full of compassion even in pain. Menahem wrote, "As he died, I felt the world shift." 3 days later, in silence and grief, Menahem walked into the hills. On a lonely path, Jesus appeared. No grand light, just Jesus's gentle presence. Jesus placed a hand on Menahem's shoulder and said, "I saw your heart when others hid. Keep going." That single moment brought peace, purpose, and a fire in his heart. Menahem quietly wrote under a tree, "Jesus didn't ask for fame, just hearts that stay close. If my words reach one open heart, it's worth it," he said. In his final warning, Menahem urged readers, "When the world forgets real love, watch and pray. Return to your first love. Jesus still calls." He described a dream of people across nations holding scripture, surrounded by light. His presence never ends. His last message, "Death is only the beginning. He will come." Menahem hid the scroll, trusting someone, maybe you, would read it and remember. Jesus sees those who walk in silence, and he remembers them all.